Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Salesforce Commerce Masterclass, a beginner's workshop to retail solutions. I'm Simon, and I'll be your host for today's session. I think we'll wait for a few more people to dial in. So whilst we're waiting, we'd love to hear if you are currently using e-commerce with Salesforce. You can pop a yes or no in the comment section. Fab. So for today's session is designed to introduce you to Salesforce e-commerce and how it can transform your business operations. So throughout the next hour, we will be covering multi-channel commerce strategies along with live examples and insights into how these strategies can be implemented in real-world scenarios. So if you're just starting with e-commerce, this masterclass will provide you with the foundational knowledge that you need to get started. Your speakers for today are Mikel Lindsaar and Timo Kovala. Mikel is CEO and founder of Store Connect, and Timo is a managing architect at Capgemini. They're here to share their expertise and, of course, guide you through the possibilities that Salesforce e-commerce offers. So I'll leave you in their capable hands, and I'll be back later for the Q&A. Enjoy the session.
Great. Okay, then. Thanks. That's a good introduction. G'day, Timo. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. How's it going in Australia?
It's late in Australia, but thank you for asking.
Late or really early?
Really early. It depends if you've been partying or you're waking up to do it. So, yeah, it's probably very late for me.
Yeah,
it's 1 a.m. So, yeah, it's quite a time slot. But unfortunately, the wonders of the global time zone system mean that there's not really a good option when you're trying to reach the USA and Europe at the same time when you live in Australia. So
that's true.
The only good thing we can say is that it is the 22nd of August here in Australia, whereas for you it's still the 21st. But don't worry, the future is awesome. You'll love it when you get here.
That's nice. And I think it's a good segue to e-commerce. Even though you might be sleeping, your customers might not. So
yeah, exactly. So let's dive in then, I guess. So as we just went over, we've got our speakers here, and we'll make sure that any comments and questions get asked towards the end of the Q&A. Feel free to ask the question at any time. We'll store them up and make sure we get to them. And this is being recorded, so obviously afterwards, if you miss something, you can always watch it again. All right, so this is our agenda, Timo.
yeah.
What are we going to do? Why e-commerce matters? Does every business need it? Is it easy just to bolt it on? And why does a single source of truth give you scale? So I think, instead of just having this as a, pitch fest or whatever else, we're really trying to focus in on, well, what is the fundamental reason why we'd be looking at e-commerce? Because I guess not every business thinks that they're an e-commerce business. And I think you just touched on this just before, right?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, if we talk about the first topic, for example, why does e-commerce matter? I mean, if we think about direct to consumer, that's pretty much a no-brainer these days. If you want to sell consumer products, you definitely need an e-commerce web store. But if we talk about traditional B2B industries like manufacturing, healthcare, you name it, I think there it's not as straightforward. It might be that e-commerce is not your thing, it's not worth it, but I think you definitely want to question those kinds of thoughts if you want to grow your business, if you want to, get scale in unprecedented way.
Yeah, and I've had quite a few customers and clients of ours at Store Connect here, and just so everyone knows, Store Connect is an e-commerce platform built on top of Salesforce. We've had quite a lot of clients who have come in, not your traditional B2C, not even your traditional B2B. They're trying to leverage this massive growth that we've had on the general internet, on this idea of, meeting and talking with customers. And we'll go over some statistics around that in a minute, because it is very important. You get your classic, I want to buy a bike or a pen or a computer or something. Sure, you're going to go online. But speaking to manufacturing or health life sciences or professional consulting organizations where you wouldn't necessarily think they're an e-commerce company until you realize that they should probably have a way for customers to book an appointment to come in for a consultation. Or, we've even had Salesforce consulting companies launch e-commerce stores with Store Connect so that their clients can buy, an extra block of 10 hours for emergency consulting or development or administration, or sign up to monthly plans and things like this. So I think the term e-commerce company as such, in a lot of people,
We think retailing,
really in the retailing area, or direct to, that we're a shop and we have stuff on the wall and you can buy it. I think it's merged and morphed a lot now into with marketing and
it's like
the whole works.
Self-service, self-buying, offering options to interact with your product.
Yeah. And we'll get into that on why does it matter, because we've got a few good statistics around that on should you use it, like why is your company needing it. But in terms of why it matters, I think you just touched on it then, is that giving them that experience, right? And this is a really good statistic that came out of the Salesforce Connected Shoppers Report, 5th edition. I think this was last year's from memory, or maybe at the start of this year. But 80% of customers say the experience a company provides is as important as its products or services. When I first read this, I was a little bit flabbergasted, I have to say, because I have my favorite businesses and companies. But then I took a bit of a deeper look at my own experiences, and I think it's quite correct. It's pretty bang on. And when you think about this is pretty terrifying for a company that's not providing any sort of online solution.
Yeah, and I mean, this is even heavier if we're talking about like high investment goods like cars, for example. I mean, I wouldn't buy a car even if it was a bit cheaper from a automotive retailer that I don't trust, or if their customer service is shitty. Pardon my French. So I wouldn't trust my money to them. I mean, what if something ended up wrong and I'd have to do like a ticket to them or something, get a refund or
Yeah, and that's where it really comes into its own level of intensity. I think the whole aspect of this customer experience, like you might, I'll give you a great example, the Apple products, right? The product is obviously evidently a good product, but their Apple Store experience is also a fantastic experience, and that they relate that through their website. Like everything has that one feel across their entire business. Their marketing, their online store, their in-person, they've really nailed that experience aspect. Compare that with, some of the other brands that don't quite have that cohesive feeling. That can be quite a challenge.
I think that's a key point also, that some companies don't realize that experiences are not good or bad. It's a qualitative metric. So do you want your experience to be like streamlined, holistic, speaking of those same topics, or do you want it to be a chaotic mess every time that you sort of interact with a company? It's a different experience. Then it's a poor experience, I think.
Yeah, that's right. And this, as an addition to that, is 74% of shoppers say it takes no more than 3 bad experiences to abandon a brand. This is from the same report. And this is, 3 out of 4. I mean, all you need is those 3 bad experiences in a row. And it could be the website didn't load, someone didn't respond to customer support in time, they went into the store to talk about their purchase and the store couldn't pull up their record because it was in a different system, it wasn't connected. There's 3 bad experiences, and the clients that love you would leave.
Yeah.
So, it's a really powerful bit of information that I think feeds the fire of building a very, very strong e-commerce environment and making sure that experience works. Sometimes the page doesn't load or something like that, right? I was on our podcast, Customer Commerce, today, talking with a friend of mine, David, and he said a website not loading is the retail equivalent of walking into a store and saying, "Excuse me," to a sales representative, and them ignoring you and just walking past you. Like, you would never do that in a retail store. That person would be out. But this happens all the time, and it's not a great experience.
That's true.
I think there's another metric that I found a little while ago, is that people only remember their best experience and their worst experience within a sales process, right? So you could do 95% of it really well. So all of their experience is good, right, for 95% of it. And then that one time you really screwed up, if that screw up is worse than the best part of the good, then they're going to remember a bad experience.
Yeah, that's
like it's
true.
It's not 95 times good versus 1 times bad. It's one bad one versus one really good part, and that's your metric. So it's
and of course, I mean, it's never going to be 100%, but at least if you can minimize the percentage, and if you have some sort of contingency plan of handling those situations where you notice that there's the web store is offline or and experiencing some heavy loading times or something, that you offer some discount coupons or something. It's very oftentimes it's not a big investment to have those in place, but it goes a long way to fostering even a higher level of customer loyalty than you might have had previously, because handling those service errors is actually also a touch point. So that's not something that you think about necessarily.
Yeah, someone asked me today on the podcast, what would I recommend to companies who are walking into Black Friday and they haven't really got maybe they had some problems last year with the website, or they haven't really figured out how to solve this yet. And honestly, we're only a very short period away. You're not going to be doing a whole website migration right now if it's critical to your business just before Black Friday, or at least you're not going to start that process right now. If you're right at the end of it, sure. And one of the things I recommended was, on those days where you're going to have load, or that performance might become a problem, put a big banner at the top of your website that loads with the website. Don't make it a pop-up or something that needs to fire up with JavaScript or anything. Just put a banner at the top and say something appropriate, like, here at company ABC, we're obsessed with your customer experience on our website. If you notice anything that's not quite right in your experience today, please email us at this address and we'll make sure we make it right for you. Having something like that at the top, very, very obvious, very available, means that customer, when they do hit that problem, has a way to contact you that doesn't require filling out a contact form, which could also be broken, right? They just have an email. I can email them, "Hey, I tried to buy blah, it didn't work." And then your customer support team can get back in hold of them and say, "Look, really sorry about that. We've created a cart for you. Here's the link to it. By the way, there's a 10% discount code. Go and buy it." Or, "We found your order. We fixed it." They've just got that proactive way to talk to that customer. And one of the pro tips on that was, don't frame it as an apology. Like, don't have the banner saying, "We're very sorry, we're experiencing some site difficulties. Please contact us at support with any issues." That's boring. No one's going to care about that. If you say, "We're obsessed about your customer service. We want to make sure every client is, well looked after. Please contact us if you notice anything that's not quite right." That creates totally a different expectation and viewpoint.
I can see where you're coming from, and I wish a lot of companies would follow that kind of thoughtful approach, but I don't know. Is it the hectic nature of doing business, or that we so often just do things without thinking, that we would either leave it off entirely, or we would just add that kind of like pop-up that there might be some service disruptions. Sorry.
Well, that's where solutions like Salesforce and e-commerce on Salesforce with Store Connect could make that quite seamless, because you could set up a flow that just before Black Friday turns on that little banner. Set that up as an annual thing and just have it running. Anyway, cool. So this is another similar vein, right? That 65% of customers expect the companies to adapt. So this is actually exactly on your point that you just made. Are people actually going to proactively do this, or are they just going to treat it like a transaction? Because 65% of the customers expect the companies to adapt, but a similar percentage say that most companies just treat them like a number, right? So it's like most of them expect them to be looked after, but most of them also know that they're not.
Yeah.
So in business, really, when you're trying to get attention, the thing you're trying to do is differentiate yourself from every other competitor. This becomes a very interesting point of differentiation. And yeah, it's, you're a marketing guru. The whole marketing line comes into this of how do you actually differentiate yourself? And this is a really key aspect.
I mean, I like this, and I think this should be an encouraging, or these should be encouraging numbers to a lot of businesses, because this means that you don't have to be the most creative out of the bunch. You just need to do really good customer service.
Yeah.
And every passionate entrepreneur or business executive should have an idea of how to do their business and how to create great experiences. It doesn't mean that you need to do something super creative out of the box thinking. It's just do your job well.
Yep.
Do what the customers are expecting, and that is oftentimes enough.
Yeah, and this also forms a good business case slide. If you need to get some support for your project, this slide and the last two, I would have as your leading 3 slides in the business case. 80% of customers say the experience matters more than the product, or the same as the product and service. 74 of them will leave after 3 bad experiences, and 65 of them don't believe you're actually going to give a damn about them anyway. That forms a really great introduction to be able to go, so this is why we want to do ABC. And I think you're very spot on there that it doesn't actually take a lot. People can feel, there was a comment in the chat just then that from D that they expect that they just expect issues. They come along all the time, and that's both terrifying and exciting. Because it means if you can get that under control and you can look after it, you're going to be really differentiated from the rest of the clients out there. So these are some of the incorrect marketing, irrelevant marketing, out of date marketing. They're also all bad experiences. We talk about this all the time at Store Connect when we're talking to clients. We ask our clients, put your hand up if you've received an email with a discount code for the thing you just bought full price for. You go and buy our mascot, and then this is Steve, by the way, everyone. He has to be introduced to every webinar. He's our little mascot in Store Connect. So you go buy your plush doll for $20, and then an hour or two later, you get a discount code for a plush toy. Start showing up on all the websites you're visiting, like Google and everything, that you just paid for it. That's the worst, I got to say.
That's like the equivalent of going to a store, continuing your first metaphor.
Yep.
That they will flip their finger after you purchase the product.
Thanks for buying us. See you later. Or even worse, you pay full price, and then the next person walks up and they go, "Oh yeah, that's 30% off today," as they're buying.
That's dynamic pricing, though.
Yeah, dynamic pricing.
You pay what you want.
Yeah, exactly.
Can always pay more.
So yeah, having, again, this is sort of where that whole Salesforce integration with e-commerce comes into its own as well, I guess. And having that full end-to-end integration, we'll talk about that more in a minute as well. Alrighty. So does everyone need e-commerce? So we touched on this at the start, and if you've been listening so far to this webinar, you know that our answer is going to be yes, from what we've already said. But we've got a cash register there, and I think that cash register image is probably part of the reason why a lot of people don't actually think they need e-commerce, because they don't have one. They don't have a cash register in their office. They don't have a payments terminal or whatever, because they don't consider themselves retail. They don't consider themselves a way to purchase things online. But I think this is really a missing opportunity for a lot of companies. One of the
Sorry.
Yeah. One of the
Yeah, I was
things
just
that I've
gonna pitch
seen
in.
professional services companies do is, offer introductory services and online courses where, we have a professional services, a software development company that uses Store Connect, and they have a product that you can buy where they do a health check of your software application for $1,400 or something. And that's an online purchase. And the reason they have it there is it cuts down the experience of time spent for their customers massively. Because instead of having to send an order form with a massive set of terms and conditions and then do a wire transfer and all this sort of stuff, a lot of those clients can just sign up on the website, put down their divisional or corporate credit card, and it's done. And all of that data is now in Salesforce. It all triggers the right workflows and the right emails and the onboarding messages, and the speed that you can get for these sorts of things is massive. And I think that whole, the customers meeting the customers where they are, really. So this is a really good example of that. This was a research study done showing the percentage change of e-commerce, retail e-commerce in this case, but it mirrors across the industries. So it's growing like 12% per year over the last 5 years. I mean, that's mind-blowing. It's gone up $500 billion. Well, it's planned to go up $500 billion just in the next 12 months. And that's, that's a massive market. That's $500 billion of additional revenue going through online. So the answer to your question, or the answer to the question that we posed, I guess, on does everyone need e-commerce? Well, your clients are looking for it. And that's they're
it's
just
not a
online
question
now.
to your business. It's a question of, do your customers want e-commerce rather than does your business need e-commerce?
Yes.
I think that's something that a lot of business executives don't think about.
Yeah, and it's easy to sort of go, well, we're not a retail brand, but think out of the box a little bit.
Yeah.
What services can your company provide that can deliver some sort of instant gratification or instant satisfaction to your customers about something? It could be paid courses, could be webinars, could be introductory services, could be consulting services.
Spare parts if you're a B2B.
Spare parts,
so you don't have to go full on if you have like a super complex product, or if you're selling heavy machinery, you can sell spare parts.
Yeah, exactly. Or even services. This is all, and again, when you have that as a connected business environment with, your full stack, building it on Salesforce, using Store Connect or the other solutions, that then gives you that full customer view on how all of that hangs together, which is really interesting. This next one shows also a breakdown. And what you can see is that dark purple there on the left is the physical stores. So there was obviously a massive decrease in physical stores in 2021. No prizes for trying to work out why that might have been. But then you saw it rebound in 2023, and it's dropping again. It's showing that it's dropping again into 2025 and beyond. And this is just showing that a lot of that online, newer digital channels, they're just eating more and more and more into that physical person-to-person experience. And I think, that the challenge with e-commerce is don't try and replace, make it as a solution to make it easier for your clients, not as a carte blanche replacement for any human contact, because it's not complementary.
It's complementary. It's meant to complement the in-store experience and vice versa.
Yeah, because if you don't have that personal touch or that human touch, that's where you're going to lose some of those customers as well.
Yeah.
So we've also got this, that 60% of customers prefer buying directly from brands. This is from the Google Material D2C white paper. So, there's a lot of this Amazon Marketplace, all these sorts of solutions. But what I like about this is this also works for non-retail, right? So if you're a business and you've got a solution, make it easy for people to buy from you on the website. Make it easy for them to book in an appointment from the website. This is all e-commerce, right? E-commerce doesn't have to mean only a checkout of a paid item, right? E-commerce, the commerce transaction could be booking in an appointment to have one of your team come and visit them at their house to replace the glass, or the transaction itself might happen post the visit. So really having this solution where you can actually buy directly from brands and buying from your website really makes a big difference. And this obviously is another thing. I think everyone on the call can relate to this. People expect to be able to do what they need. So 3/4 of people expect to be able to do anything online that they can do in person or by phone. This is a tough one to do, to be honest. But yeah.
I think that even for the younger generation, I think the thought of grabbing a phone, calling somebody from a company, it's so weird. So
Yeah, right.
I think like that's they don't call anybody with phones these days. Maybe
Yeah.
their parents, but even then they send a WhatsApp message,
Or a text or whatever.
or text, yeah.
Yeah. So having how would businesses go about, do you think, implementing this? Because it's easy to say, well, I'll let them buy a widget online. That's okay. They can buy the AirPods and they can do that. But what if you're offering services that are not just a physical product being transacted or something like that? How do you actually turn that into allowing people to do stuff online? I mean, I'd look at that and go, the obvious ones of a well-manned support center / chat system that allows them to actually interact with your business asynchronously, so that they're not having to sit there on the phone on hold. They can send in a message that says, "Hey, please help me," and then that reply text comes when it comes, and then they're going back and forward. Forcing people to sit on your website with a screen open is not this. You know what I mean?
No.
Yeah. I had this with a telecommunications carrier. Like, this blew me away. It pissed me off so much that I messaged them directly on X and trying to work out a solution. But our phone company in Australia, I wanted to send one of my team into a store in another state to pick up an iPad. Shouldn't be too hard. So I get on the phone to their support. I get online first. I ask on the chat online, and they say, we have to verify who you are before we can allow you to do this. Now, bear in mind, to start the chat, I'd entered a username, a password, and a one-time password, right? So then they needed to verify me. So then they get my name, of date of birth, and everything on chat. And I'm like, you literally have this.
That
they also
scammy
own...
also.
Huh?
If you wouldn't trust, I mean, if you would provide that information and they would not be able to use that, I would start, like, alarm bells would start ringing. Like,
but furthermore,
is my information being used for malicious purposes or something?
Yeah. But furthermore, they're the company that provide me with my phone plan, and I'm doing it from an app within my phone, which they own. Right. So, like, it was mind-blowing to me that I'm having to do these validations. And then I said, I need my staff member to go in and pick it up and put it onto a paid plan for data, right? Because I need this iPad to be able to be used straight away for a thing we were having. And they said, oh, we can't do this on the chat. You need to call our help desk. Okay, fine. So I call the help desk. I go through the whole revalidation process again. And then I'm speaking to the help desk, and they say, yeah, we just have to put that person on as an authorized contact on the account where they're allowed to do anything. And I went, what do you mean by anything? And they said, well, they can remove you as the owner of the business. I'm like, okay, is that our only option? Like, seriously, can't I pre-authorize that they can do it, give you their name and driver's license, and that's that? No, we can't do that. Okay, so I put them on as a full account holder of our entire business. This is to pick up a $1,000 iPad. They then walk into the store and the store team say, oh, sorry, we can't give it to her because she's not authorized. I mean, what do you mean? I literally spent 3 hours yesterday on the phone getting all this set up. And they say, oh, yeah, it takes 48 hours for the authorization to come through.
Well,
and I'm like, so my only option here,
that's
I'm in America,
asynchronous for you.
my only option here is for me to get on a plane from Miami and fly to Melbourne, Australia, a 22-hour flight to pick up a $1,000 iPad. Is this actually what you're telling me? And I was flabbergasted, So anyway, there you go. Don't do that if you're in business. So one of the advantages, though, of offering your services online is that you can expect a much higher profit. So 20% higher profit and 1.7% higher retention. So these are very, very powerful figures. Again, if you're trying to convince some power that be that you need to invest into this area, this is a good slide to have. Alrighty. So can you just bolt on e-commerce? What's your experience in this, Timo? Just whack it on, boot up another WordPress website and see how we go?
Yeah. No. I mean, literally, it's not that simple. I mean, of course, you'll need some integrations. We're talking about acronyms like ERP, PLM, PIM, OMS. But the thing is that when we're talking Salesforce, you would need those integrations with your CRM anyway. So even if you don't do any e-commerce, you probably would want an integration with your ERP, your product life cycle management system, PIM, etc. So basically, if you're building an e-commerce platform on top of Salesforce using Salesforce data, it's basically utilizing pretty much all that you already have in place. So for Salesforce customers, I don't think the leap to starting your web store shouldn't be that high, unless you don't have any integrations. But then that's a bigger issue, I think.
Yeah, that's true. And we've had clients come to us saying, look, we've got this spaghetti where they've just kept bolting on solutions, right? And when you keep bolting on solutions, you sort of end up with something like this, right? You've got all of these systems sitting there. And I think that image of the customer over there on the right-hand side should be someone with tearing his hair out, screaming at the computer, to be honest. But trying to navigate...
That creates the 48-hour latency, I think.
Yeah. I mean, this is exactly what that is, right? The different systems aren't talking to each other. And it was a mind-blowing experience. I was in complete shock. Like, just to end cycle on that, the staff member had to sign up for an account under their own name and personally purchase it. And then we had to repay them and take them off the account. So the whole thing was a waste of time. Anyway, so having this disconnected mess becomes really challenging. And the problem with the disconnected mess is it creates conflicts of data. And where that comes into its own, we had a client that came on to Store Connect after they were doing a Shopify store against Salesforce. Now, Shopify is a fantastic product. Salesforce is a fantastic product. But as soon as you try and get two systems that have different data models talking to each other, you're creating situations where you can get data loss and you can get all data transformation issues. And this happened with this client. So their customer came in and ordered something from their Shopify website. And they put they selected an address that was already pre-selected, not really realizing it was their old address, and they just put through the order. And then they realized their mistake and contacted the company to fix it. So the company in Salesforce went and updated their shipping address to be their new address. About 30 seconds before the Shopify to Salesforce synchronization clicked in and overwrote it with the old address again. And then the customer gets an update notification saying, yep, we're on track to ship your order to your old address. And the customer's like, what? I was just on the phone to you guys. So then the customer logs into Shopify and updates their shipping address to be their new address. About 30 seconds before the update from Salesforce came in and overwrote the Shopify changes with the new update from Salesforce. So despite the customer calling them, emailing them, and updating it, so 3 different times, the package still went to the wrong address. right? And this was their final nail in the coffin. They were like, we just can't do this anymore. So they've now migrated into a single system. But these sorts of data conflict problems, that's where you need to realize that bolting on a WooCommerce website or a Shopify website or another one, if you're multi-currency or multi-store or multi-region or multi-brand, could be the most expedient solution to get the site up and running, but you're probably not really taking into account the human cost of maintaining those systems and those integrations. Have you actually, that's an interesting question from you as an architect role. How often do clients misestimate the level of maintenance required to keep two-way synchronization integrations happening or 9-way synchronization integrations happening? Like, these are hard problems to solve.
Well, I have to admit that happens to us consultants as well all the time. We tend to underestimate the level of maintenance needed for these kinds of solutions. It's
we had another client that had a WordPress website, Salesforce, and a learning management system, and they had a solution where they needed the WordPress website to be able to buy a webinar online and have that. It's like a sort of it was a hybrid. Yeah, it was a hybrid training class. So it had an online component and an in-person component. So they had to be able to buy this online, and that needed to update the learning management system to register that person so that they would get the invite and the links and all that sort of stuff to the pre-training material. It also had to update Salesforce to reduce the number of seats available for the in-person event. And then Salesforce also needed to get the details out of the learning management system of the customer and the details and things like that, and vice versa. So there were 3 systems, and every system needed to communicate to each other system. So the learning management needed to tell WordPress whenever the items went out of stock. Salesforce needed to do the same thing. And so it was two-way synchronization in 3 different systems. It was a nightmare. They spent over a year trying to get this working. It never worked. And part of that was because the APIs in the learning management system were not very sophisticated. So it would create timeout errors on the WordPress website and all sorts of stuff. They ended up ripping that whole thing out and replacing it with Store Connect over about 3 months. And the whole thing just runs super smoothly now because there is no integration requirement. So everything's just in Salesforce. And the only integration that exists goes from Salesforce to the learning management system and back. So instead of having a triangle, it's just website is within Salesforce with Store Connect. And then you just have this one integration up to the learning management system. Anywhere that you can reduce and remove one of the lines from this diagram is going to save you and your company untold amounts of money, pain, frustration, and future maintenance costs. It really is an incredibly expensive thing to draw a line between 2 systems. All the software people in the world say, nah, it's easy, don't worry. But, who's going to get up at 2 a.m. on Saturday morning to fix it when it breaks?
As an architect, I can relate. I mean, I draw lots of lines, and I don't always think about the cost associated with those lines. So I better start drawing fewer lines next time.
Yeah, that's right. And I think someone just mentioned, who is that? Who said that? Ahmed just said Conway's Law. Yeah, and Conway's Law, for those that aren't familiar, is that an organization will tend to design systems that, in the simplest sense, mirrors the organizational structure that they're building for, right?
Yeah.
So a really simple example of this is you might have a sales team that's in Salesforce. You might have a marketing team that does some other aspect of your business, and you might have a social team somewhere else. You're going to end up, your organization will tend to develop systems that mirror those isolations. So the marketing team might get its own little, WooCommerce website to sell some Steve plushie toys, right? And the sales team gets their own sort of B2B website for complex quoting. And now we've got 2 systems doing ostensibly the same thing, which is online retailing. So that's an example where this spaghetti comes together. I mean, this spaghetti on the screen only has one thing of each, but in many organizations, they'll have 2 CRMs or more, or multiple point of sale systems, or multiple websites, multiple e-commerce platforms. All of these things proliferate, and it takes a real skill, and I think a little bit of that sort of masterclass to viewpoint to know, hang on a minute, sure, booting that extra system over there might be the simplest way to do it. And yeah, it's got a few features that we really like that will be a bit easier. But what's the long-term cost? Are we going to be better off consolidating this now and continuing to expand on that aspect? And I think this is a really key point. And it's interesting that you say as a consultant, you're happy to draw lines, which is good.
I like lines.
I like lines. Lines are expensive though. And I guess with this mess, coming back to that previous datum, 74% of shoppers take no more than 3 bad experiences to abandon a brand. You know, every one of these connections is another opportunity for the system to go wrong. So that's not where you want to go. So I guess to start to bring it home, why is a single source of truth so hard then? You know, well, I think the reason it's so hard is that the problems that you face with a single source of truth tend to be the same problems you start facing when you want to scale. And not many businesses know what those problems are going to be because they haven't hit that scale level yet. And so when you're thinking with single source of truth, you're sort of quite often sacrificing some short-term immediate benefits and joy for longer-term scale and growth. And I think this is a challenge that a lot of businesses tend to run with. You know, because it's easier just to take that next siloed thing, right?
Yeah, and there's a general misunderstanding of what it means, and that causes a lot of businesses to relegate the decision to IT, which is definitely the wrong way to do, because business should own their customer insights. Business should have a responsibility to maintain the data. IT is there to simply support and make things happen, enable. So IT shouldn't be the one responsible for building the single source of truth. But I think that it's, for some reason, there's a disconnect. I don't know why it is, but businesses don't see the immediate impact of having a single source of truth because it seems so abstract. That they are so used to having fragmented truths about their customer that they just cannot fathom what it might be like when they actually have that sort of like one truth that is shared among the system.
Yeah, because I think the knee-jerk reaction is to do this. You know, it's just add another siloed tool. Oh, we need customer support. Let's turn on Zendesk. Oh, we need some project management. Let's turn on Monday.com. Oh, we need, you know, whatever else is happening. We need a web form. Let's just whack it on Google Forms. You know, and now you've got all these different bits of siloed data, which is great if you just need something out on Tuesday. But what do you do with that data into the future? How do you make sure that data won't end up in a data breach? How do you ensure that that information is now contained on that client record, so you know that Joe has not only filled out an online form, but they've also bought something from your spare parts store. They've also bought something from your retail store, and they went to the spare parts store after they went to the retail store. So that might point to, well, hang on a minute, maybe we forgot to sell something. Maybe there's an upsell opportunity here in the retail store. You know, there's all this sort of data that you can start collecting on those interactions when you have that single source of truth. And, you know, Salesforce Data Cloud and all these other solutions really come into that. But the key is that you need all that data, right? So to give you an example of what an architecture diagram would look like this on Salesforce is what you're seeing on the screen here. So this is an example of using Salesforce fundamentally on its core products. So we're talking sales, service, and then into the future, the customer data platform, maybe the loyalty platform, depending on what you want to do there. But Store Connect as an e-commerce platform fits right into that using all those standard objects. And then you might also have Marketing Cloud, which does all of its two-way synchronization into Salesforce. You might then, as you mentioned, use something like MuleSoft, which is then talking off to ERPs and other PIMs and fulfillment systems. But really you'll notice Salesforce becomes the center of this conversation. And that's a very powerful way to do business. If you can keep having information landing into Salesforce, you're going to make your whole life a lot more simple. Good. Do you have anything to say about this being a consultant, Timo?
I really like this diagram.
It's so pretty, isn't it?
Yeah. I wish it was as pretty as the Salesforce diagrams make it look like, but yeah.
Yeah, there's
really,
a lot of work that hides behind this, to be honest.
Yeah,
it does
and
take.
I mean, this might be the end result, but the starting point is more like the spaghetti. So I can tell you from experiencing that going from the spaghetti to this nice looking neat view is a process, and I don't want to scare anybody, but it's good to be prepared that it will take some long hours, a lot of sweat and tears to get things to this point. But I think it's better to do it earlier than later, because the problems that you get from not having a single source of truth, they escalate, they grow. It's like a snowball. So basically, your competitors are going to do it earlier. So
you may as well get on the bandwagon.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and just to give an idea of some of the benefits you can get out of a single source of truth. So our Store Connect users, like this one on the top left, is really interesting, that they've safely saved 20 to 30% time saving across their business for this sort of work with the product setup and reporting and all this sort of stuff of e-commerce. And this other thing from Rick from Beyond Plumbing about how much business they might have lost in the early days if systems are doing on multiple systems and working separately. There's a lot to be said about the long-term benefits. I think single source of truth is sort of like a good diet and exercise. You don't see benefits today, but over years, you'll see massive gains.
Yeah.
All right. So as we walk into our Q&A section, that wraps up the first part. We do have more info if you do want to find out more about Store Connect and how to connect and bring all of your systems into Salesforce, all of your websites, all of your e-commerce. Store Connect, think of Store Connect as all the best parts. Well, our clients actually tell us that Store Connect is the best parts of Shopify and WordPress built directly in and within Salesforce. So it's a full CMS, it's a full e-commerce platform, it's a full point of sale system, rewards and loyalty, all of that. You can reach out to these two people. We'll leave that slide on at the end as well. But now I want to move on to the Q&A. So did we have any questions come in while we were giving that chat? And first of all, thanks so much for listening to us. That was really nice.
Thank you.
Amazing, fantastic. I'll leave the slide up if anyone would like to scan those QR codes and also visit the site. But yes, as you mentioned, we'll take questions now. So do let us know if you have any questions for Mikel or Timo, and we'll get around to them. We had a couple come in. So the first one is, I have relationships with distributors who manage sales in each geo area. How do you manage attributions for sales?
Yeah, this is fun. So I can tell you how we do it in Store Connect, and then Timo might give another example in terms of just more generic if needed. But the way that we tend to do that is Store Connect allows you to run multiple stores by geolocation. So then each of those stores, when the order comes into Salesforce, it will be related to that store location. Now, each of those store records can be a different design, different website, different URL, different branding, different images, different product selection. You can really specify anything you want there. We have one client, to give you an idea of scale on this, they had 73 e-commerce stores in 4 countries and 4 currencies, right? Across 26 brands, I think. And they're all on different versions of BigCommerce. They've migrated all of that. I mean, they're about halfway through. They've migrated about 30 of them now into a single Salesforce org, into a single Store Connect license. And the time savings on that, I mean, Rebecca from this company is just blown away by how much time they save. They used to take up to, a week to produce a report to show how much they sold last week, because they'd have to log into 73 stores to download the CSVs to put it into a spreadsheet. So that's the way we do it in Store Connect, is both by running different stores. We can also do it, other ways you can do it is by UTM codes and things. When people are clicking on certain links, you're saving that data in the session and then capturing that during checkout. We support all of that. But
Can't you also do it with shipping country? I mean, if you have locations in that country, or based on your sales region, you can use like a categorization of a shipping country using Salesforce Flow, or maybe even custom metadata or some other way of classifying those different addresses.
And this is actually one of the benefits of building, like, because Store Connect is built on Salesforce, we get a lot of this automation capacity effectively for free. So whereas, say, in Shopify or BigCommerce or WordPress or things like that, you would have to build some sort of custom tooling or buy an additional third-party plugin to generate reports based on location and region and salesperson and all this sort of stuff. In Salesforce, you could spend some money, create one flow, and just have that work both inside and outside, for your internal sales and your e-commerce sales. So that's a very powerful aspect. I hope I answered that question, and they should definitely reach out to Nick or Martijn, and we'll book in a call and help them out.
Amazing, thank you. Another question here. How do you manage a B2B store where some of our clients have their own price books while others pay full price?
So dynamic pricing.
Dynamic pricing. Well, yeah, there's two aspects to this, though. So first off, from the Salesforce point of view, you need to make sure you've got your own price books, right? For each of those different types of people. So the way Store Connect works with this is we look at those same price books and products. So Store Connect looks at the price book object, the price book entry, and the product to records. And the way it allows you to work is you might have one public price when you're just viewing it from the website. If you then sign in as a customer, it can then apply your customer-specific price book to the store, and all those pricings now update with your pricings. It can also detect, if you're a partner, that you might get access to additional products that aren't available to the public, right? So you might have authorized repairers or resellers. You might have bulk discounts, things that you're not offering publicly that you do offer to your partners or pre-registered clients or VIP customers. You can have those products show up separately. So the cool thing about doing this with Salesforce data is that if that customer logs into the website, they're going to see their pricing correctly because it will be different per client, per price, per store, however you want to do that. I think we've got like 5 different ways to determine which price to show. But if they call and they speak to Timo and say, hey, Timo, what's my price for blah, blah, he can look in Salesforce and be looking at that same data, right? So you're not going to run into a situation where they're getting one thing from the website and one thing from your sales team. It also means, I think Timo touched on this earlier, about if you've got all these connections, you need to make sure they're all working, right? So one of the problems with multiple sources of truth is you need to then remember to make sure that everything's getting updated constantly. If everything's just in Salesforce, you only have to update that in one spot, and your website gets updated, your retail point of sale system gets updated, and your internal sales team talking on the phone or via email also gets updated instantaneously. So that's a massive feature.
Yeah, definitely, and that's also something of a red flag, that even if it appears correct on the website and in your CRM, if the order management system doesn't have the right pricing or the dynamic pricing available, then the invoice is going to have a different, sum.
That's right.
And
that's a great way to piss off a customer.
Yeah.
Amazing, thank you. We've got one more question for now. My Shopify integration has required a reasonable investment to get running. Why should I re-platform?
Well, first off, I'm sorry. We hear this a lot. Look, I think the main reason you would want to re-platform into Salesforce directly with Store Connect is the automation that you can build in Salesforce, and really utilizing the investment that you've made in Salesforce. So the integration that you would have between Shopify and Salesforce provides for certain levels of data synchronization between the two. But let me give you an example of a real life customer. So this customer has built a flow within Salesforce that detects certain changes of the purchasing strategy or like the purchasing activity on their website. And depending on what product is selling the most, according to Salesforce data of both their inside sales team and their website and their point of sale, they're modifying what's shown on the front page of the website through Salesforce workflows, right? And Salesforce automations. So you're able to directly and dynamically update the content of your website according to information that's being collected within your Salesforce instance. And that becomes exceptionally powerful. Doing other things like automating putting up a banner for Black Friday months out, because you can just write a flow that says, on this date, update the banner to say this, and on this date, take it down. You could write flows and automations that put products on sale at certain times, depending on stock quantities. And when the stock level's getting down to like 2 or 3 items, take it off sale, because you don't necessarily want to be selling out the last of your items at a discount price. You want your last one to go at full price because it's your last one. Creating these sorts of automations become possible on Salesforce. Doing that sort of thing on Shopify, look, it's possible. It's not like it's impossible, but having that full integration from that with Salesforce, and also updating your Salesforce backend data at the same time, and keeping your internal sales team up to date on all that, that almost becomes impossible when you have 2 different systems. The amount of work required for that is a bit mind-blowing.
Bringing that all into triggering
brings it back.
Marketing automation as well. I mean,
triggering
Shopify is always going to have a different data model. It's never going to have exactly the same objects, and it's the same types of data that you're going to have in Salesforce, and that means that there's always going to be some kind of a disconnect between marketing and commerce, customer service and commerce, etc.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
You're never going to build that kind of seamless experience between different channels with the customers, and that will cost you money.
Yep. Correctly. And there's another aspect that the App Exchange is the largest business marketplace in the world for software. If you use Store Connect with Salesforce and you're doing this whole transaction thing and you want to update your ERP, well, if you have a Salesforce-based ERP, we're talking about Centinea, Rootstock, IQ Grower, there's a bunch, then the Store Connect order coming in is just a trigger away from updating the stock levels appropriately within your ERP. So there's no API call. So there's no need for something like an API integration suite like MuleSoft or Zapier or what have you. Similarly, you might put your accounting system in there like Accounting Seed. And again, it's just a trigger away from updating the right journal entry or sending out the invoice or updating the vendor invoice. Maybe as the stock levels are running low, your system in Salesforce could automatically put through the reorder invoice and send that off. There's so many things that you can start automating and moving aside from staff once you're fully on platform. And I think, the key datum for that person is that the automation improvements into the future will far outweigh any cost of replatforming if you do it right and identify those opportunities.
Great, thank you. Last call for questions.
I think we've got 30 seconds left. It's probably
reach
out, contact us. Nick and Martijn absolutely would love to hear from you, and happy just to do broad demos. They're not heavy sales pitches. I think one other thing for any admins listening, you can actually just download Store Connect from the App Exchange, and you can actually get it running with a paid license just with a credit card. You don't actually need to talk to a salesperson. If you think you can dive into it, we have extensive help and training and resources. And if you know anything about Shopify or WordPress, you would be able to get your own store up to speed pretty quickly. A lot of our customers have self-implemented. So definitely give it a shot.
Amazing. Thank you. Well, thank you, Michael, and thank you, Timo, for your insights throughout the session. And thank you, everyone in the audience as well, for tuning in. Do connect with Michael and Timo on LinkedIn as well, if you're happy to. But yes, aside from that, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Bye.
Bye.